Hello everyone, this is Marco and welcome back to my channel. I would like to thank you so much for all the support for the first episode of this series, The Hammond Collection. Thanks to Rod's Random Work for the name again. So I figured I would post number 2 today. If this is the first time you're seeing one of these episodes, don't worry, I'll give you a quick explanation. I'll be photo editing the Hammond Collection figures to make them look a bit more film accurate. I'll be using the Dinosaur Style Guide, which is available for free to download. The link's in my link tree in the description. The reason I'm doing this is because most collectors are quite upset with how they look like. They look pretty cartoony for what they are. They're supposed to be premium collector's figures as advertised by Mattel themselves, but these tend to have a bit more of a cartoony look, which is more suitable towards younger children and such. For now, this is just an aesthetic point of view. I'll probably do a separate video for quality control. In the previous episode, we covered Parasaurolophus, Baryonyx, and Ceratosaurus. This time, we'll be looking at some smaller figures. So there's quite a bit to fix with the Velociraptor. Even an untrained eye can tell that there's something off about this figure. Mainly it is the super big feet, lanky legs, and just general weird proportions. But I'll be delving into each single aspect of how this figure looks and how it can be improved. It's really odd to me that Mattel went and resculpted a brand new figure and not used some of the previous sculpts, which are far more accurate, proportions-wise, and even detail-wise. For example, this Attack Pack style Velociraptor is a bit more accurate to what we see in the first film. Taking a closer look at the style guide, we can see that it has smaller feet, and generally the proportions look a bit closer to what we see in the film. I think the best figures that Mattel has released in terms of proportions were this Battle Damage Velociraptor here, which has a really nice long tail and a little bit smaller feet. They're still on the big side, but definitely smaller than the Hammond Collection ones. And another good one is the Extreme Damage Velociraptor as well. And remember, these are in the main line, which is catered towards children. And the collector's line is catered towards collectors of all ages. Now this is the Hammond Collection Velociraptor head compared to the replacement head that I have sculpted and released for everyone to get. As you can tell, there is quite a lot to be said about the head. I'm just going to show you the comparison instead of delving into every single aspect of how wrong this head sculpt is. It is mainly based on Velociraptor blue, and they just painted it with a brown. As we fans know, the Velociraptors from Jurassic Park 1 are quite different from the newer Jurassic World Raptors. So recycling a sculpt based on a different design for a collector's item is pretty much inexcusable. Here are the replacement feet that I have made for the Hammond Collection Raptors, and they stand no problem with smaller feet. They stand really well anyway, and that's just proof that it's purely an aesthetic choice and not a functional one, which is just really odd to me as a designer. Something else that is just present on this sculpt and the Amber Collection Raptors is this really ridiculously short finger. Why is it so short? It also needs a bit more wrist definition, so you can tell where the fingers start. It almost looks like the designers at Mattel just took a quick glance at the film design and just gave us their own interpretation, which is not what the majority of us collectors would expect from a premium collector's line. Obviously, we don't know the working conditions and what kind of time constraints these guys have. So looking at it from the top, we can see that the Raptor's quite slim, but this one has semispheres as hips, which looks incredibly odd. It just looks really goofy to me. These things are meant to look cool. I know it's meant to be for articulation so that thighs can swivel in and out, but you should not be changing the aesthetics of the dinosaur to accommodate for that type of articulation, which isn't really that important anyway. Maybe for a gimmick in the main line it would work, but not for this type of figure. So the proportions in general are quite all over the place. So yeah, they just went and sculpted a brand new figure with worse proportions than the figures for the main line, which are catered towards children. Like, I'm not trying to be funny, it just doesn't make sense, especially for the world's leading toy makers. Like, Lego and Mattel are the leading toy makers in the whole world. And it's just shocking to me that they can't get something like this right. That's enough ranting for now, but this is the original Mattel one compared to my own edited version. Okay, so the galley isn't too bad. It still suffers from the same issues. The medium-sized Hammond Collection figures aren't too bad, but the smaller ones have pretty much got everything. Every single problem that the bigger ones have, but exaggerated like ×3 or whatever. So let's start taking a closer look. Looking at the style guide, we can see that the proportions of the galley are quite weird anyway, but the colors look a bit different. It's not like the stereotypical galley that we all know from the film. It is one of the variants, which is fine. It's a bit weird, but yet again, it doesn't really replicate the variant that well. It just kind of looks a bit like it. Like it's got elements from two variants. Anyway, let's have a closer look at the head. The jaw has got a really weird jaw hinge articulation, which is the same one that every single smaller Hammond Collection figure has, which makes the jaw even bigger. So the jaw needs to be a tiny bit slimmer, the head needs to be a bit smaller, and that's pretty much it for the head. So choosing this type of jaw hinge articulation is cheaper for them, but they custom design jaw hinge articulations for the main line. They spend more effort on kids' toys than collector's items. Of course, the feet are a bit too big. They could have added extra articulation in the feet. I know Siratech and Rod's Random Work have made replacement feet for these guys, so if you want extra articulation and smaller feet, you can hit them up. Also, the hand claws aren't painted, and generally the figure is a bit too small compared to a human figure. It should be a tiny bit bigger. So this is the OG Mattel version. This is it with the tweaked proportions. So there's not much to change, but if we wanted to give it the classic Gallimimus colors, here it is. It kind of resembles more the running Gallimimus, the Legacy Collection version, which seems to be more accurate than this one. Yeah, so the Gallimimus isn't too bad. Mine did come with a pretty bad quality control issue, as all my Hammond Collection figures have. But anyway, let's move on to the next one. When the Dilophosaurus's first teaser pictures came out, the first thing that every collector noticed was the lack of the white paint around the darker patterns. That is one of the classic features that the Dilophosaurus has, and I've seen many people repaint theirs to include that particular detail. But me being me, I noticed more problems than just that, including the head sculpt and the eye. The eye has a slit pupil in this version, which is not film accurate. The pupil in the film is round, and the jaw shape is totally wrong too, so it can accommodate the cheaper jaw articulation. And this is it with the proper paint patterns. The darker patterns should be darker, and there should be the white outline around those. So the reason why they skipped the white outline around the dark patterns is budget-wise, probably. We can't be 100% certain. There is a quick solution to that problem, and I will talk more about that later when I talk about the accessories that come with this figure. Also, the classic big feet have made a return with this one, but I can understand why, because the frill does add a lot more weight to the figure, so that's okay. Regardless, this is how it would look like with smaller feet, and it looks much nicer in my opinion. They could have added a stand like they did with the Amber Collection. That would have been a neat accessory. Also, look how much nicer that looks with the white outlines around the black patterns. Talking about the accessories, it has a removable frill, which is neat, but it does also have the collapsed frill, which honestly looks really strange. I don't know why they incorporated that. When the frill is collapsed, you can barely notice it in the film anyway. So adding an extra piece of plastic on the neck just makes it look more bulky than it should do. They could have completely scrapped that and used that budget for the paint apps and painted the throat red, because it does have a red throat in the film, and add the white outline. If they really didn't want to add the white outline, they could have added the Venom piece like the other releases from the main line. Again, this figure does have semi-spheres in place of the thighs. The tail's too thick and too short, so a longer tail would definitely benefit it from standing better. The reason, again, they make the thighs bigger is to accommodate the articulation for the swivel thighs, which really is not necessary, dudes. If the thigh can just move backwards and forwards, it's totally fine. I'd rather have slimmer thighs that look film accurate than having a posability that isn't really that needed anyway. And this is what it looks like with the corrections. Also, those wider thighs are much more expensive to make because they have a really complex way of articulating. So if they had just a basic articulation in the thighs, it would benefit the budget too. Thanks again so much for the support for this series. I wasn't expecting so much interest in this, but it obviously shows how much we want this line to improve. All these criticisms are done with the best intentions. It's not just to, crap on their work or whatever. We genuinely love this stuff and we wouldn't care if we didn't, so no hard feelings, but this stuff can be better. Thanks so much for watching.
I would like to give a massive thank you to all of my Patreons. Seriously guys, your support really does mean the world to me, as it helps me do what I love for you. You help me buy materials, and most of all, you give me a helping hand with improving the quality of the content of my videos. Even if it's just a small donation, every little helps.